Hi, everybody. Welcome to this free eco printing workshop. I'm really excited to be able to host this and welcome you. For those of you who are new to eco printing or maybe have not been following me for a long time, my name is Nicola Brown. I'm a textile artist living and working in Southeast Ireland, and I absolutely love sharing simple techniques and processes that will help you develop your own creative nature and textile practice too. So if you'd like to share where you're tuning in from, why not drop a comment just with your name and where you're tuning in from. And Shauna, my right-hand woman, she will be able to chat to you behind the scenes while I'm presenting this online workshop. And unlike previous events, I am actually doing this. I want to give you the most information possible. It's going to be approximately an hour. You can ask questions, but the real focus on this is about the foundation of eco printing in the dirty pot and working with eucalyptus vegetation, both as an eco printing material, but also if you're interested in dyeing your textiles in a reactive pot, in a dirty pot, without using powdered mordants. So everything that we do or that I share is going to apply. It's going to be shared with a view to being environmentally mindful and also health conscious. And I'd like to just introduce Shauna, and I'm going to add Shauna to the stream for 1 second. She can just say hello to you. She's not even in Ireland. I'm here in cold Ireland, dressed very warmly, upcycled woolen arm warmers printed with eucalyptus. But Shauna can just say hi and where she's from too.
Hi everybody, how are we all? I'm tuning in today from the Netherlands, from Amsterdam. So it's very chilly here as well, Nicola, but I'm delighted I'm not in Ireland.
Perfect. So thank you very much, Shauna. If you have a question and you would like Shauna to cue it for me to answer at the end of my workshop, you need to put 3 question marks at the front of your question and 3 at the back of your question. And that way, Shauna can find them much easier. And the reason that I'm not going to answer them in the middle of the of my presentation is because I want to give you the best value possible. I want to share with you the most information I possibly can within the hour. So the first thing that I would like to say, I'm going to share a PDF file with you, and then I'm going to go into things in more details. So this really is an ingredients list. These are the ingredients for success when you are eco printing in the dirty pot with eucalyptus. I'm going to discuss the pot. I'm going to explain what a dirty pot is, but basically you need a dedicated printing pot. You should not be using your kitchen equipment for any sort of dyeing, even natural dyeing. So you really want to have a dedicated printing pot from the health perspective. You need eucalyptus leaves or bark. However, if you don't have access to them, onion skins will give absolutely fantastic prints as well. So please do not stress. Many people stress if they can't find eucalyptus leaves. Eucalyptus leaves are marvelous, and that's why I'm dedicating this particular online workshop to working with them. However, onion skins are fantastic too. And maybe you could give me a thumbs up if you actually like working with onion skins yourself. If you are an eco printer, just give a thumbs up or hit that like button so we know that you agree with me. So you're also going to need some fabric, and that needs to be washed and soaked overnight. More about that in a minute. You're going to need a heat source, something to heat your printing pot. You'll need vinegar, scissors, string, towels, buckets. You're going to need something to wrap your bundles on. But one thing that I think is really important, you actually need time to enjoy the eco printing process. There's no point in rushing and trying to jump ahead of yourself. Try and be mindful. It's a very mindful experience. Walking in nature, gathering the leaves, getting everything ready. Maybe you're going to use an old pot that belonged to your grandmother. Enjoy the process. Don't rush things and break things down into simple, easy steps. You need to consider wearing old clothes, sensible footwear. I recommend that you really have either your phone or a camera and document the process. Take photographs of yourself as you're working, particularly for those of you who are totally new to eco printing. And the reason I say that is I know that many of you have not eco-printed before and you're wondering what a dirty pot is. And taking photographs and documenting what you're doing is really, really simple. And afterwards, when you go back and you look at them, you'll say, oh yes, I remember I used a leaf from that tree here or eucalyptus bark from that tree there. So it does help to do that. I then think that for some people, it could be very helpful to wear a mask. I'm going to discuss the health implications of working in the dirty pot in a minute. But for some people, I think a mask is a really good idea, and optional gloves, particularly if you are working inside for the mask. You need good ventilation and you don't want to be breathing in loads of steam, even if you aren't using chemicals to fix the color. And also with rust water. So that's just my ingredients for success, and I'm going to go through the different things and share plenty of images and tips with you now. I'd also like to say that Shona is commenting as me in the comments. It's not me actually typing as well, so it will be my name. Shona is my right-hand woman, and she's my digital virtual assistant. So it's fantastic to see everybody coming in from different countries. And it's really nice to know that we're all united by the passion of working with natural materials to create beautiful color and print. So I actually think that the very first thing I should share is a little bit of information about the eco printing pot and working in an environmentally mindful way. So it's important, if you're new to eco printing, to understand that the majority of people who eco print or naturally dye, they are using chemicals, and they're called powdered mordants. Now, if you are naturally dyeing with many different sorts of vegetation or eco printing, these are necessary to fix the dye on the fabric. And that's one of the reasons why eucalyptus is so fantastic, because it actually has what's called substantive natural dye. And substantive dye means that you don't need one of these traditional powdered chemicals to fix the color on the fabric. It is important also to say that even if you are sorry, now I just saw something popped up there. Apologies, I got slightly distracted. But if you're working with traditional powdered mordants rather than in the dirty pot, it is important to stress that there aren't health implications about wearing the pieces that you have printed. The health implications and the environmental implications are when you are using the product. So that is important. What you print will actually be safe afterwards. And there are also implications with the mining of the metal salts, et cetera, to create that powdered mordant. So mordants are necessary traditionally to fix color on fabric. And why would you choose to work without them? And what is the simplest alternative that is environmentally mindful and health conscious to use? So the reason that I like to work without them is I'm very interested in the environment and sustainability. I'm not a chemist, but I'm aware of how many harsh harmful chemicals, are polluting our waterways, are in so many different things that we have available to purchase in stores, for example. There's a real throwaway culture, and from fast food to garments. And the textile industry is particularly bad. The textile industry really has so many different ways it's causing damage to the environment. And it could be as simple as with cotton, for example, all the pesticides and herbicides that are used to grow the cotton fabric, you know, the cotton fiber or plant to make cotton fabric. So I like to choose to work without chemicals whenever is absolutely possible. And the simplest alternative, the alternative that I love to use that is environmentally mindful and health conscious, it's actually the dirty pot. And so it's just wonderful to know that there's a simple thing that we can do, which in a big way influences what our impact is on the environment. And if you're asking what a dirty pot is, it is a reactive pot. So it's a metal pot, not a stainless steel one or a glass pot. And it's a reactive pot. And when we eco-print in one of these, this can be referred to by the phrase using the pot as mordant. And what it actually means is the metal composition of the pot that we're using is going to influence the colors that we achieve on our textiles. And it will also help make them more washable and light fast. Very important. And of the pots that are the best to use, aluminium, iron, and copper, they are all reactive. And aluminium, which is the large pot that you can see here, in fact, both the pots on that burner are aluminium. This, or aluminum, if you live in another country, those are my absolute top picks for eco-printing without powdered mordants. Now, brass would also be brass is a metal, and it is a reactive metal, but I've tried experimenting using a brass pot, and it really, really did not give me any results that I was happy with. So aluminium is my top pick if you're new to eco-printing. And if you really can't access an aluminium pot, I recommend that you get some foil, some aluminum foil or some tin foil, and crumple that up and add it in a stainless steel pot. And that way you can actually achieve good results. Not as good as using the pure aluminium pot, but you can achieve good prints as well, particularly with onion skins and some varieties of eucalyptus. So I'll explain in a few minutes how to actually set up that dirty pot, but I can see that there's a question, for example, from Elizabetha, and she's asking what type of fibers can be eco-printed or dyeing. So that's exactly what I am going to share with you next. So I need to just check and make sure I have got correct slides, and here we go. So, does all fabric absorb color equally when you are eco-printing or natural dyeing in the dirty pot? And the answer is a big resounding no. It is very, very much easier to eco-print on protein-based fabric. And protein-based fabric is anything that's come from an animal. If you think about wool or silk or mohair or cashmere, all of those fabrics are considered to be protein-based, and they are the easiest to achieve really beautiful prints on. And the way you prepare this fabric before you are eco-printing is you need to give it a really good wash by hand, or put it through the wool setting in a modern washing machine. And when I am doing that, and with all my students, I absolutely insist that they use, or I use, a very, very gentle soap, not a detergent. So I would never use any of the environmentally friendly or the green eco laundry detergents, for example, because often they have natural stain blasters. They might have some sort of a citrus juice in them to remove stains. And when we're eco printing, we want to attract the color and the prints. And you can see in this particular piece, the image here on the screen, that I've got beautifully strong red eco prints from the leaves. Those particular leaves are actually Eucalyptus gunnii leaves. And then you can see that mottled gray, almost watercolor-like effect background. And that's because of the pot liquid that I was using and the fact that I had actually sprinkled this fabric with vinegar beforehand. So it absorbed the vinegar unevenly, and then that had a reaction with the pot and the liquid as well. So use a gentle soap, such as an olive oil soap, or maybe a goat's milk soap. If you're in America, you can use Dr. Bonner's, but definitely give everything a really good wash before you are ready to eco print. And then when you've done that, you want to soak your fabric in plain water overnight before you eco print. Sprinkle it with vinegar and then tie it up with the vegetation you're using and process it for the length of time that the vegetation needs. It's nothing to do with the actual fabric. You always process in relation to the actual vegetation that you use. And that's just really important to stress, because people get very anxious. You can also put all sorts of different bundles in the pot at the one time. They don't all have to be wool, for example. And the arm warmers that I'm wearing, these are wool, but I processed other pieces in the pot at the same time as them. So that's just important to know. It's the vegetation that you determine the length of time in the pot, and not the fabric. Then if you wanted to wash cellulose-based fabric, that needs the same soap, but I would wash that in a very much more aggressive cycle in my washing machine. Of course, you can wash by hand, but to me, that's an awful lot of work to do. So in this case, you can see trousers that I'm wearing, and they were white linen trousers that I had washed in the washing machine using the soap, and I did it on the hot wash with plenty of water and plenty of agitation. And then after that, in order to achieve good prints on any cellulose or plant-based fabric, it's important to, I see I have a spelling mistake. Apologies for that. To soak the fabric in water, not to soap it. So to soak the fabric in water overnight, and then just before you're ready to lay out your leaves, you want to dip it in a homemade rust water solution for 40 seconds and bundle it as usual. Now, if you don't know how to create a homemade rust water solution, I have a YouTube video sharing exactly what to do. So if you're getting good value from this video anyway, please maybe hit the like button and consider subscribing to me on my YouTube channel. But you can find that homemade rust water video later after this live stream has ended. And for those of you who are actually watching as a replay rather than joining me live, if you have questions, please don't forget you can add them as a comment after the workshop ends. I will be checking them all tonight and tomorrow morning, because tomorrow I'm also going to do another live stream, and I will address any comments that I feel I haven't adequately addressed today about eco printing with eucalyptus in the dirty pot. So just one final reminder that the bundles always need to be processed according to the vegetation that is used and not the fabric. And that is just so important because, yeah, Just remember that, according to the vegetation, not the fabric. So the next thing that I would like to share is how to actually create a dirty pot. So the first thing you need if you want to start a dirty pot for the first time, or if you're moving over to eco printing without powdered mordants and you're not sure what to do, get your aluminium pot, and the larger the pot, the better. And the reason for this is it's better to have more pot liquid floating around your bundles than less. You don't want to cram your bundles in. And if you have the opportunity of a wider, shallow pot, it's better than a taller, narrow one. Even if they both contain the same volume of water, you will fit more fabric and bundles in if you keep to a wider, shallower pot. You'll just have to trust me on that. So I like to add a pint or two of vinegar and half fill it with water. And I can see that there has been a question from Lean asking which type of vinegar, red or white vinegar. Well, actually, any vinegar works. I've actually used bad quality red wine when I was teaching in Portugal at one stage that tasted like vinegar. It was from first season grapes. So you can use any sort of vinegar you like, including balsamic. So I recommend you just use the least expensive vinegar that you can get in your area. So, I just want to remove that comment. Now, so you add your vinegar into your aluminium pot. I like to add a chunk of rusty metal into my pot as well. And there's going to be a reaction between the water in the pot, the rusty metal, and this all helps, reacts with the vinegar, and it really, really helps you achieve those complex background colors and get a really dark, deep, dirty pot liquid going. It's called a dirty pot for a reason. It really does look, your pot's going to look really black after you've had 1 or 2 eco printing sessions in it, particularly if you use eucalyptus vegetation. So adding one of these chunks of rusty metal to your pot is really helpful to achieve prints like I achieve. And I'm assuming you've joined this workshop because you'd like to learn from me. So adding string to the chunk of metal makes it easy to add it to and from your pot as necessary, because it could be possible that you want to change the color of your pot liquid later on. That's something that I share a lot during workshops if I'm teaching, paid workshops and in the Eco Print and Wet Felt Club or the recent challenge. There's not enough time, during a session like this where I'm going to be online for an hour to give you all those little nuances. That's where if you join a paid opportunity with me, we have more time to go through all of those sorts of things and adjusting the pot liquid, etc., etc. So adding string to your chunk of metal will make it much easier to put it in and out of the pot. Then boiling your pot, so it's half full of water, you've got vinegar, and you've got a chunk of metal. If you boil it for an hour before you add your first bundles, that will help you achieve the most intense results. And that's what I like to do. But when you are eco printing in the future for future sessions, you don't actually need to to boil it for an hour before you add your bundles, but it is definitely better to have your pot boiling before you add your bundles to the pot. And then between eco printing sessions, unless you have very, very heavy, thick commercial pots like I have, where the sides of the pot are almost half an inch thick, 6 or 7, up to 2 centimeters thick, really. Unless you have thick pots like I have, you need to remove the pot liquid and your metal out of the pot between sessions. Otherwise, it's going to develop holes. And that is just an important tip for you. But please, please be mindful of health and safety implications all the time. Never ever remove, pour your hot liquid into a rubber or a plastic bucket or a tub, because you're going to burn yourself. It's going to make holes in it. Let the liquid cool down and then transfer it. And if you decide that you're going to leave the chunk of rusty metal in for any length of time, the pot liquid will get darker and darker, and you are going to see the effects of that the next time you print. So what I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to just check briefly the questions that Shauna has starred for me that are in relation to what I have already discussed. Then I'm going to move on to a little bit about the eucalyptus vegetation. Okay, so I'm just going to check it. So let me just see. So here's a question from Frances. She's asking, is Orvis paste okay for fabric pre-washing? I have not used it in this case, and I would say no, Frances. I've had the experience where people at different workshops where I've facilitated them internationally have prepared some of their own fabric beforehand and had very disappointing results. I always like to insist people use an olive oil soap. I'm not saying you can't use Orvis paste, but I haven't used it myself, so I can't give you a definitive answer. And there's a question from Sharon, and she's saying, wash the fabric in a gentle soap. And she had started from powdered mordants, and she's been scouring her fabric. Is the difference using powders or scouring really not? Is that the difference using powders, or is scouring really not necessary? Sharon, I'm sharing with you what I do and what I find really successful. So if you want to scour your fabrics the way you usually do when you're preparing them for eco printing with powdered mordants, I would then say what you need to do is actually after that, I would say you need to then proceed to wash them another time using the olive oil soap. That would be my recommendation. And Tamara is asking, doesn't washing wool cause it to felt if it's put in the washing machine, and like sweaters and my arm warmers? So I constantly eco print cashmere, wool, silk. At the top that I'm wearing is eco printed silk, and I wash this in my washing machine all the time. And I recommend, if you have a modern washing machine, you can safely put your pieces through on a wool cycle. Now, in Europe, most of our machines are front loading, and they're very environmentally mindful. They don't need to use a lot of water. But if you have a top loading machine, I'm actually envious. They're such fabulous machines. But I would just say, take care, put it in and do a cool wash without much agitation, and you will have no problem with your pieces sweating. Now, there also might be a time tomorrow when you might want to eco print an old woolen blanket, for example, or you might want to cut it up and make it into a coat, eco print the fabric, as one of my membership club participants, Rita Summers, did recently. She made the most wonderful coat in response to a challenge I had. And in that case, you might choose to actually wash the blanket on a hot setting, and you want it to felt a little bit. So that's just something to consider. But if you use the modern wool setting on your washing machine and you have a 20 or 30 degree, about 68 Fahrenheit, without much agitation, you will have no problems whatsoever. And Alison has a question about how wet should the fabric be before steaming as a bundle. First of all, Alison, it's important to say I'm talking the whole time about dropping the bundles into this pot liquid, which I'm going to share with you how to make in a minute, or I've shared how to make, apologies. The fabric needs to be soaked in plain water overnight. Then it needs to be squeezed so it's damp, but not really, really, really dripping wet, and then sprinkled with the vinegar. And so it just needs to be damp. If it's too wet, you're going to get blurry prints. If it's too dry, you're not going to get such an intense color from the dirty pot and from your leaves, and you are also going to potentially have a lot more creases in your piece. So I'm just going to see. Okay, I'm going to move on with some more sharing with you of slides, and then I will answer more questions, because I can see that there are other questions coming in that I would like to answer, but I really want to stay focused to give you the most information in the shortest amount of time. So I'm going to start to chat now about eucalyptus. And eucalyptus has a very special relationship with the dirty pot. So it's just incredible. When you are working without mordants, there are not that number of different types of plants that you can actually dye with and print with and have results that are totally washable year after year. Now, as I said when we started, I'm wearing a silk, or a few minutes ago, a silk top underneath my sweater. And this top was printed in 2019. I've worn it so many times since then, and it gets washed in my washing machine. In the winter, I wear it every week. So it's been washed multiple times this year so far, and it's held its color absolutely brilliantly. So eucalyptus has a very special relationship, I feel, in the dirty pot, and I absolutely love it. And for that very reason, it gives wonderful prints. Not every eucalyptus leaf gives such a good print, but overall, the leaves and all the bark give wonderful eco prints, and it's also a fantastic natural dye material, as opposed to an eco printing material. And I'm going to share some images with you afterwards about using it as a dye. So it's substantive. What that means is it gives color without mordants. So for those of you who actually are used to using with mordants, it actually gives different colors at times when you use mordants. Often the prints are very much yellower. I find that they are more beautiful without mordants, and they can be more red. And another really fantastic thing about the eucalyptus is that all parts of the tree, anything that's soft and flexible enough to actually put in a bundle or put in your pot, you can use it. So that would be leaves, the bark, the seed pods, small twigs, little branches. You might choose to roll your bundle on a branch. All of the parts can be used. Then some varieties of eucalyptus give red prints, although many don't. I'll never forget when I first went to Australia and I was teaching there, my perception was that all eucalyptus were going to print red, almost all, when I got to Australia. And of course they didn't. So it pays to get used to the trees that are growing in your own locality, or the eucalyptus vegetation that you can buy from a florist if you have no eucalyptus trees near you. And it's also important to say that if you live in California, or you live in India, or you live in Australia, and I live here in Ireland, even if we have the same variety of eucalyptus, we may not actually get the same colored prints. And that's because the age of the tree, the soil conditions, the growing conditions, many things play a part in whether we get good prints or the same print. So that's just something to be aware of. So some varieties of eucalyptus give wonderful red prints, and of course that's what many people want. And for those of you who are interested, I do have a free PDF that you can download about red giving eucalyptus. And I do see that there are quite a few questions coming in about the upcoming paid workshop. So I might as well just say to you, that is going to be released tomorrow. Mihal will probably kill me, but at the end of this training today, if you like, I can share a link to the sales page with you. Not now, obviously, I want to just keep teaching and sharing information. But your next step, if you really don't want to do this by yourself, if you really want step-by-step video tutorials and just so much information, the new workshop is going to be available to purchase tomorrow. And I'll be giving loads of information tomorrow about what it actually entails, but it's all about eco printing and naturally dyeing with eucalyptus. And I'll share the link with you at the very end of the session tonight. So some varieties of eucalyptus give red prints and many don't. And to release their best color, eucalyptus leaves need a minimum of 2.5 hours and up to 5 hours boiling in the dirty pot. Remember, we're working without powdered mordants, so we need to give the fabric every opportunity to receive the color from the leaves. Now, when I start experimenting with a new eucalyptus variety, I would always give it 5 hours to see, did I get any red color, or what my color actually looked like, what the prints were like. If I wasn't happy with the prints after 5 hours, I would just not bother using that eucalyptus, that specific eucalyptus variety again. But if I had good prints after 5 hours, I would then try for 3 hours, maybe the next time, 2.5. And that way I can work backwards and I can identify which leaves give which color after a certain number of hours. But at the beginning, just know that between 2.5 and 5 hours is going to give you the best results. And here are Eucalyptus parvifolia leaves. And they are a small little eucalyptus that gives red prints. And that's also bark. So those bigger splodges of color in that piece there, those are actually prints from eucalyptus bark. And the bark gives a different print depending on whether it's the outside piece that was against the tree, or sorry, at the outside, or the inner bit of bark that was, you know, the piece that would be against the tree. So you get different prints from the different types of eucalyptus bark, and also whether they are bits from the outside or from the inside. So that's why eucalyptus is absolutely my top pick for anybody who wants to get really dramatic prints. Now, there's a question here from Kirk, and Kirk is asking, he's saying that they don't grow in most places outside Australia. I'm not sure, Kirk, which place whereabouts you're actually living. It says you're in the cold US, and what native species should he be using so that they, so that it's eco-friendly. I would say this workshop is all about eucalyptus, but onion skins are your substitute. Anything that I'm saying about eucalyptus, you're going to get fantastic results with onion skins. I'll just show you. This is a lamb's wool cushion, or pillow, as you say in America, in the US, from my couch there. And that was printed years ago. So onion skins, absolutely brilliant. I do have information about other vegetation in different boot camps on YouTube. So why not follow me on YouTube, and you can find that information out there. But this is specifically about eucalyptus. And Shauna has just popped up that. Thanks, Shauna. Perfect. So there is a PDF that you can download later on if you're interested for red giving eucalyptus. But in fact, honestly, Kirk, I've facilitated workshops in very many regions in America, in the US, and also in Canada. And there was far better access to eucalyptus there than there is in Ireland, unless, like me, you actually grow the trees yourself. So I have now, because it was so difficult to get eucalyptus, I've actually planted over 900, believe it or not, of many different varieties on my property. So the images that you see me sharing, those are images of me actually, they're from my own trees. Okay, so let me just see. So here's a question from Karen. How would she know how much time the vegetation needs to print well in the dirty pot? Soft vegetation needs about 2.5 hours, and eucalyptus needs between 2.5 and 5. Onion skins are happy with either. And for the purpose of this, we're talking about eucalyptus. So if you're not familiar with them, I would give them 5. But for any that you know give good prints, I would for any that you know give good prints, you can look at my PDF afterwards. You can download that and you can trust them for 2.5 hours. So here's a great question from Carolyn. Is it okay to refrigerate a bundle for a day or two before putting it in the dirty pot? Yes, after you have prepared your bundles, I would say if you wrap them in waxed paper, being environmentally mindful, parchment paper maybe, or put them in a plastic bag that you've happened to have got some groceries or something in and that you can't get rid of the plastic. Rather than upcycling it, I keep all plastic that I really end up having to bring home from the shops if there is some, and I just use it wherever I can in the studio. So I would put the bundles into parchment paper or a plastic bag. I would wrap them up and I would put them in the refrigerator, but I wouldn't leave them for longer than a day. I would much prefer not to leave them for longer than a day, but you certainly can. Likewise, when you take your bundles out of the pot, you can leave them until the following day to open them. And there's no necessity to keep them moist at that stage. So great question from Eloise, and I hope Eloise, I hope I have pronounced your name correctly. So can we use eucalyptus from the shop in the US? Absolutely. And florists or places like Trader Joe's, Good Goods, places like that are excellent for getting eucalyptus leaves. And so many people say, oh, I can only get 2 or 3 different varieties of eucalyptus in my florist. I would say, lucky you. For many years, I was lucky if I even got eucalyptus in a florist here in Ireland. And the last time I paid for it, it cost me 45 euros for a big bunch. So other countries, actually, it's often easier to access. But yes, you can use eucalyptus from a shop, no problem. And then Claudia has a great question. Can she pour cooled pot liquid into a stainless steel pot? Absolutely. Yes, you can. No problem whatsoever. But I would still say, first of all, it needs to be a pot that you're not going to cook in. And I would say, because stainless steel is non-reactive, you can put it in, Claudia, but I wouldn't put it from a cast iron pot into an aluminium pot, if that makes sense, only into a non-reactive one. Another good question, access with coconut soap. Coconut soap is absolutely perfect to use. So is palm oil soap, any soap that has a high oil content. The thing though about palm oil soap is we don't want all those trees to be chopped down. So it's just trying to be environmentally mindful, but use what you have to hand, or any nice homemade soap will work. So that's that. So this, I'm just keeping a little look here. So yeah, I want to explain about the eco printing process and also about natural printing. So okay. So just one final thing from Jill. How do you store the dirty pot liquid between sessions? Jill, I leave it in my pot because my pot has thick sides, but if your pot doesn't have thick sides, take it out and store it in a big plastic tub. And this final question before I keep going, can you use red onion skins? Yes, although I like the brown, or some people call them white onions, better. Yeah, so I think what you're calling white onion skins, I call brown onion skins, and they sometimes are a little bit more purple, but they tend, if anything, to be more olive green than the white or the brown ones, and I prefer the brown ones. So I'm going to just continue. I just want to see what I'm going to add here now. 1 second. Yep. Okay, so I think what I want to do is I just want to give you the order of process for eco printing. I'm conscious that it's already 6:45, so we've been 45 minutes, and I do want to talk a little bit about dyeing with eucalyptus, plus answer a few more questions. So it's very, very simple. What I recommend you do is you wash and prepare your fabric in advance. So I wash and prepare mine the day before, and I leave it soaking in my bath overnight. So it's soaking in water. But if anything happened, I could just dry it, and then when I'm ready to use it, I could soak it in water overnight. So you're taking your wet fabric out of the bath. Now I like to then put it in my washing machine because I'm doing a bigger batch at the one time, and I will spin the water out of it. But if you don't want to do that, my cycle is only 10 minutes in the machine and it'll get rid of all the water. You can put it in a salad spinner and spin it by hand, or you can just roll it up a bit in a towel or squeeze it till it's almost dry. I find that I don't have as much strength in my hands and my wrists as I used to, and that's why I like to pop it into my machine. So then you've got your eucalyptus vegetation or onion skins. So you lay your piece of fabric. I'm going to say it's a scarf. You're going to lay your scarf down on the table. And if it is wool, silk, or any protein-based fabric, you're going to sprinkle it with vinegar. If it was a cotton or a linen scarf, you would dip it in the rust water solution. Again, you can find that video afterwards. I have a tutorial for making rust water. You would dip the wet scarf in the rust water solution, squeeze most of it out and lay it on the table. Then you would add your vegetation. You would roll it up and tie it really, really tightly. And it's very helpful to roll it up on something. You might choose to roll it up on a copper plumbing pipe, and that will make the colors more orange. You might choose to roll it up on a rusty metal pipe, and that will make them more dark. And pieces like these wool arm warmers that I'm wearing here, I would have rolled these up on rusty metal. And they didn't start this sort of background silvery gray color. They were like a creamy beige, but because of the rusty metal and the iron in the pot, that's the color that they've now gone for the background. So you'd roll them up and you would tie them really tightly. You would bring your dirty pot to a boil. I would never, ever, ever put the bundle in when the pot was not boiling. I would bring it to a bubbling boil and put it in and make sure that the bundle just goes right under the pot liquid. I then tie the string to the handle of the pot and I make a note what time the bundle went in and what vegetation I'm using. And I set an alarm clock. So if I'm using onion skins in my bundle, I can take it out after 2 hours if I want to. But eucalyptus leaves 2.5 hours up to 5 hours. And just keep that pot bubbling. Check periodically that the pot liquid isn't going down too low. And there's a question here from Joanne. After the initial boiling of the dirty pot, when you set it up, do you add any vegetation to it? And Joanne, that really depends. I usually do, but you don't have to. But I like adding eucalyptus vegetation into the pot liquid, as well as having eucalyptus vegetation in my bundles. And Vicky is asking, what effect does eucalyptus in the dirty pot liquid give, as opposed to when it's wrapped in the bundle? So I think I'll just get this cushion again. Actually, I'll get this cushion. This is the bigger one. You can see here there's quite a pale stripe in the middle of the cushion, and this is lamb's wool. This cushion, the fabric was woven for me locally, and it was a very, very natural cream lamb's wool, like the color of the sheep's wool. And this was done in an aluminium pot, and there was some rust in the pot and a very little eucalyptus vegetation. So the color is a lighter gray color. But if you look at the pieces I'm wearing, the prints, everything is a bit darker. So this was done with more iron. And so if you have, and there was more eucalyptus in the pot, if you have more eucalyptus in the pot liquid, as opposed to in your bundles, you get more complex background color. Okay, so you pop your pieces in the pot and you boil them. You make sure that you keep the pot boiling. I like to use a gas cooker or a wood-fired boiler, because I feel that I can get my pots at a much hotter temperature. So it's bubbling away, and then you take them out. You can open your bundles as soon as you take them out and they are cool enough to handle. So that's one of the questions I get consistently asked. How soon do you open your bundles? Immediately. I think it's like all my Christmas and birthday presents are coming at the one time. But you don't have to open them immediately, but I would never ever leave them sitting in the pot liquid. I've tried, I've experimented, and they give much better prints when you take them out of the pot liquid and then they are opened that evening or the following morning. And so here's a question actually about when eco printing, and I'm really afraid I can't pronounce your name, so I'm not even going to try, but when eco printing, my leaf prints are not clear. How can I have more dark prints? So it really definitely depends on two things: the vegetation that you're using and what your pot liquid is like. So more iron, more rusty metal in your pot will make your prints darker. But if your leaf prints are not clear, it may be one of two things. You might not be using vegetation that will give a good print, or you might not be bundling tightly enough. And so if we're doing a direct contact print, so if this is the fabric and this is the leaf, it has to be sandwiched really, really, really tightly to give a very good print. Okay, here's another question. I'm just checking a few of these questions, and then I want to just have a brief chat about dyeing, and we'll wrap it up for tonight. And I want to explain how to finish your pieces. So if you have set up a dirty pot, is it best to strain out previously used onion skins and eucalyptus leaves and stems before adding more vegetation to boil a new batch of bundles? And that's an excellent question, Vivian. So if your pot is large, I would just leave them in. The eucalyptus vegetation, which is optional, but if you put eucalyptus vegetation in your pot, you can use it for at least 4 or 5 sessions, and it will continue to release some nice dye into the pot, which will react with the rusty metal, and you will get very nice complex background colors. The onion skins do something which is called exhaust. It's like getting into a bath. They're exhausted and they droop. They release all their color in one session very, very quickly. So if your pot is large, you can leave them there and they won't be in the way. But if you have a small pot, just remove the onion skins. And then here's a question from Anna, and Carol has pretty much the same question. And so the question is about using eucalyptus leaves. Can they be used dry, or is it possible to use them fresh? You can do both. So if you're pruning a tree, for example, you can store the leaves and you can have them dry for years on end. And then all you need to do is reconstitute them in water and make them soft before you use them. And Laurie's asking, have I used red and brown onion skins in the same piece? Will they react differently? They are subtly different. Yes, Laurie, they give subtly different with that. Now, there is a question here from Esther. My only option for heat source is a flat top stove, and the stove is glass. She has a 20-quarter pot made for use on a flat top stove, nice size pot or quart. Should I wait until I have an alternative heat source? Yes, I would not use glass or ceramic because some of my online workshop participants in the past have cracked theirs. I do not want to be responsible for anybody cracking their stove. So I would say, yes, you would be safer having a different heat source, I'm afraid, which might be a pain, but it's better than breaking your thing. I'm going to share some more about dyeing, or some information about dyeing, but Juliette has a really good question. If an eco-printed piece is too pale, can we try again? Changing what we screwed up in the process, of course. Yes, I often screw up myself, Juliette. I think there is a perception between people that if you have experience, everything, it's still kind of like potluck. It's not. 80% of the time, I am 100% happy and confident with that I will achieve the results that I'm expecting, and I do. So 80% of the time, that's why I can teach you, because 80% of the time I get the results as I expect them. 10% of the time, the results are better than I expect. So that's really fantastic. Probably 10% of the time, I'm not as happy, with a small percentage being I'm very disappointed. And it's interesting. After heavy rain here in Ireland, after sustained rain, I get different results with some vegetation, including certain eucalyptus leaves, not all of them, but some of them. So you have to be prepared when you're working without chemicals. You have to enjoy the season, accept the serendipity. And if you're not happy with something, go ahead and print it again. Absolutely. Great question. So I also would say you always want to cover your pot to keep the pot liquid boiling with the lid on, and keep it boiling for all the time. So definitely lid on. Now, I am going to share some information about dyeing with eucalyptus. I see that we're almost up to the hour. I'm going to share some information with dyeing. I'm going to briefly, excuse me, explain what's happening tomorrow in relation to your next step. If you were interested in looking at the eco printing online course I'm going to be offering, no obligation to. And then I will also answer some more of your questions. So if you're watching on the replay or you haven't had your question answered today, feel free to continue asking them, and I will go through them later tonight and tomorrow, and I will try and answer them tomorrow if I can, if I have the opportunity. If they're not in relation to eco printing with eucalyptus, I may well leave them for a future video. So don't be afraid to ask them. So here is some information for those of you who are interested in actually using eucalyptus leaves and bark to make up a natural dye bath. So I think that dyed fabric looks particularly beautiful when you combine it with eco printing. So if you look over there on the right-hand side in this image, that warm orangey red felt, that Nuno felt, I dyed that with eucalyptus leaves, and the Nuno felt on the left was eco printed. And for me, the colors that you achieve when you dye in a reactive pot without using powdered mordants, they appear more alive and vibrant than the colors that you achieve when you are naturally dyeing with mordants. Now, I really want to I want to emphasize that if you are dyeing and you choose to use mordants and you're using other vegetation, they are necessary. I just choose to work in the most environmentally mindful way possible. I'm not saying it's wrong to use them, so I don't want anybody to get offended, but I do think that the colors are more vibrant. They seem more alive. They're not quite as even when you are dyeing in the reactive pot. And you can see here on the left, we've got the eco-printed Nuno felt. Then beside it, a piece of dyed Nuno felt. And then in the bundles that are on the right there, you can see that there are different colors. The lower bundle is a paler color. And that's because I used different vegetation for that. So the darker, warmer toned pieces, the more vibrant orangey red, those prints were all, or those colors were all made using Eucalyptus cordata leaves from my own trees. And I was thrilled with the color. And then the paler, warm color on the bottom, that dye was just from mixed eucalyptus leaves and bark that I picked up from the ground. So you can actually see here, I'm collecting the leaves here to make the two different dye pots. So the pot on the left, or the dye bath, the pot on the left is the very young Eucalyptus cordata leaves. And on the right, it's just mixed bark and leaves that I'm picking up from the ground. And how I made the next dye liquid is I got the pots, and you can see I've got plenty of leaves in them. So the pot on the left is the pot that you'll see in the next image. So the one with the rounder leaves, the cordata. So what I actually did was I filled that pot with water up to about 3/4 full, just over half full. And I put it on my cooker for a while, a cooker that's always on. It's not one that I turn the gas up for, high. So I put that pot on my cooker and I left it for quite a number of hours, and you could see the water was getting redder and redder and redder as the dye released from the leaves. And then I kept it in my kitchen, which is quite warm, for a few days. And then before I decided to eco-print, I then put the pot on the cooker and I started raising the temperature. And I also added about a pint of vinegar, half a litre of vinegar. And then once I had my dye liquid made, I actually added my damp felt. So I would prepare the fabric for natural dyeing with eucalyptus. I would prepare it in exactly the same way as I would if I was eco-printing it, except I didn't have to sprinkle it with water, or with vinegar. So I put the damp fabric into the dye bath, and I'm a little bit cheeky. I didn't even bother removing the leaves because I'm happy with a sort of a slightly uneven color. So I left the leaves in there, and then I pushed the fabric underneath the dye. And at that stage, I left the fabric in, I put the lid on the pot, and I made sure to bring it up to a temperature, but not boiling. So in this case, you do not want to boil, because when your fabric is tied really tightly in an eco bundle and you put it in the pot, it's not going to get agitated and it's not going to shrink. But there would be a risk that if the fabric is loose in the pot and you have a rolling boil, the fabric could shrink. So you want to bring it up until you see a little steam rising off the surface of the water, but don't actually boil it. And keep it at that temperature for a few hours if possible. And then what I like to do is take the piece off the heat and then leave the fabric in the dye overnight for the best results. And I find that that really works well for me. So here you can see the piece that I actually, the coat that I made using that fabric that I dyed with the Eucalyptus cordata leaves. So I got that really, really, really rich orange-red color. And my favorite part of the coat is actually the back, because you can see the eco printing and the natural dye. You can just see they really complement each other beautifully. Well, they do for me anyway. I think they complement each other beautifully. So the only other thing really that I would like to say is how you then would care for your pieces afterwards. So if you're caring for pieces that have been eco-printed or even naturally dyed in the pot, it's easy. And this is whether they are protein-based or cellulose. You don't want to hang them in strong sunlight. So for example, if you were making a large wall hanging, I mean, I sell some of my eco-printed artwork, and I also print panels of vintage Japanese kimono silk. I would always tell a purchaser not to hang them in strong sunlight. And then the only other thing is you would just wash them with the gentle soap, like that olive oil, the coconut oil, goat's milk, some sort of a gentle soap, and they will be able to be washed multiple times. And as I say, what I'm wearing myself has been, this top has been washed at least 70 times, I would say. It was made in 2019. I wear it constantly in the winter. It's washed constantly. But I wear it a couple of times before I wash it. And in this case, I used from the string perspective, I used a thickish string. I like to use a t-shirt yarn, and I also put leaves under the string when I was tying the bundle, and that gave really interesting effects. So I think really that's it for tonight. I did say I would give a quick mention. This is a free learning experience for you, and I want to create community, and I really love interacting with you all. If you have enjoyed it, please do give me a thumbs up or consider joining my YouTube channel. But tomorrow I'm actually launching, if you're interested in what's your next step, if you would like to actually have really good step-by-step videos and tutorials from me and a library of content with lifetime access, I am launching a new online workshop tomorrow, and it's an online course. It's going to be different than the challenge course, which I ran recently. So this is going to be a really comprehensive foundation of eco printing with an emphasis on using eucalyptus leaves course. And I'm going to explain loads more about that tomorrow. And Shauna, if you have the link for that, please, maybe you could drop it in the comments for me. And this particular course, it's only going to be open for registration until Sunday evening. This is a course, it's the first time I'm launching it. It's going to be $99, full of information. You'll have lifetime access to all the videos, and I'm going to be doing some bonus live streams, etc., etc. And then next year when it launches, again, it's going to be a higher price. So this is the first one, and I'm going to hopefully get feedback from you in relation to things that ways I can tweak it to make it better. And if I do any tweaks, of course, if you do invest this time or treat yourself for Christmas or a friend, you will obviously get all the updates too. So Shauna, I am not sure if you have actually put that up, because I'm looking at questions as opposed to other comments. But as soon as this live stream ends in 2 minutes, I'm going to also put the link to the new course in the video description. Now, Mihal will probably kill me because I wasn't meant to share this until tomorrow night, but I really appreciate the fact that you've all been here. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I hope you've learned loads. You can go away and do exactly what I shared with you tonight, and you will have successful results. But if you want to do the next step and learn with me, the course is really, hopefully, the way to go. So thank you all so much. You can keep asking questions, or if you're watching on the replay, I'm going to be live streaming tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, the exact same time as today. So I'm going to be live streaming at 6 o'clock tomorrow, and I'm going to explain about the content of the workshop and answer more of your questions from today. So basically a bit of a recap, answer a few questions that are pertinent, and launch the new course, which will be open for registration only until Sunday. Thank you all so much. Over and out from Clasheen. I know Shauna would also say over and out from the Netherlands, but you'll see her again tomorrow night. So thank you, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure.